I hadn't stepped inside my old house in months. Maybe years. The place where I'd raised Ryan and Chelsea, where I'd built a life with Thomas, my late husband. A home filled with memories, laughter, and love. But when I finally opened the door, something was wrong. The air smelled unfamiliar, sterile, almost clinical. My eyes caught the empty space where my favorite reading lamp used to stand. It was gone. In its place was a cold, tall floor lamp with a modern design that didn't belong. I moved toward the mantel, expecting to see the usual photos. But the pictures were rearranged. Some of Thomas had disappeared altogether, replaced by a few new, unfamiliar frames. Faces I didn't recognize or maybe didn't want to. Then I heard footsteps. Ryan was there, my son, my boy, but he didn't look like the child I remembered. His hair was perfect, his expensive watch gleamed under the ceiling light, and a faint scent of cologne drifted in the air, the kind I knew cost more than I made in a day at Rosie's cafe. Mom, what are you doing here? His voice was clipped, like I was a stranger. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. I came to talk about the house, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. Ryan glanced around the living room, then back at me. You can't just come here unannounced. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. This wasn't the welcoming family home I remembered. It was someone else's domain now. Ryan, I said carefully, I need to know what's going on. Is the house being sold? He hesitated. Then Chelsea appeared behind him, tight smile, eyes sharper than I remembered. We were going to tell you, Ryan said, but his words felt hollow. It's already in motion, Chelsea added smoothly. I froze. The word already echoed inside me like a hammer. My heart pounded as I looked around the room I thought I knew. Every little change, the furniture, the pictures, even the silence, screamed betrayal. This is my home, I whispered. Our home. Ryan's gaze hardened. It's our property now. I searched his eyes for any sign of the son I raised, but all I saw was something cold and distant. And then I noticed the stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Bills addressed to them, letters from the bank I'd never seen. Something told me there was more beneath the surface. More they weren't telling me. More that would change everything. The house felt like a stranger now, familiar but cold, like a mask hiding secrets I wasn't ready to face. I stood in the middle of the living room, clutching my purse tightly, trying to gather courage. Ryan and Chelsea exchanged a quick glance before Ryan spoke again. Mom, we need to talk about the mortgage, he said, his voice steady but sharp. I blinked. The mortgage. That word had felt distant, almost abstract until now. You mean the payments I've been making all these years? My voice trembled, more from shock than anger. Ryan nodded. We're behind, Mom. The bank called. They're about to put a lien on the house. Lien? The word hung heavy between us. I looked down at my hands. How had I not seen this coming? I was the one who'd kept the payments going, who'd sacrificed to keep this home safe for them. And now? Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Chelsea stepped forward, her expression smooth, almost rehearsed. We didn't want to worry you. You've been working so hard. Ryan added, we thought we had more time. But the truth felt bitter. More like a betrayal. I sank onto the worn sofa, the fabric rough beneath my palms. How much do you owe? I asked. Ryan hesitated, then said, about 3 months behind. If we don't pay soon, the bank will start foreclosure proceedings. 3 months. It sounded so small, but to me it was a mountain. And then came the real blow. We need you to lift the lien, Ryan said. Just long enough for us to sell the house. We're stretched too thin. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. The son I had cared for all these years, the boy I'd bandaged scraped knees and soothed nightmares, was asking me to take on this burden again. Why should I? I asked, my voice stronger now. Ryan's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or desperation. Because if we lose the house, you'll lose Emma too. Emma, my granddaughter. The only bright spot in this tangled mess. The threat was clear and it cut deep. Are you telling me you'll keep Emma from me? I whispered, shock and hurt swirling inside. Ryan looked away, ashamed. I'm saying families have to support each other. Chelsea and I have a plan. We just need you to help. I remembered all the sacrifices I'd made. Paying for Ryan's college, watching Emma on weekends, even keeping the house payments going after I signed it over so they could afford luxuries like that boat last summer. I'm tired of being the safety net. I said quietly. Tired of being used. Chelsea's eyes narrowed. You don't understand. I shook my head. No, I understand perfectly. I just stopped pretending it's okay. For a long moment no one spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with years of unspoken resentment. Then Ryan's voice cracked. Please, Mom. We need this. I wanted to reach out to the boy who used to climb into my lap, but all I felt was a stranger in his place. I'll think about it, I said, standing up. But I need something in writing. A contract. From both of you. Relief flickered across Ryan's face, but I wasn't sure if it was gratitude or victory. As they left the house, I closed the door slowly, my heart pounding. I knew this was just the beginning. The night before the meeting, sleep was a distant stranger. I sat by the window of my small apartment, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. My fingers traced the rim of a cold coffee cup, the warmth long gone. I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me like a storm cloud ready to break. Why was I doing this? For years, I had been the quiet backbone of this family. The one who paid the bills, held the roof over their heads, and smiled through the betrayals. Now, as the hours ticked closer to the meeting with Brian Wallace, the lawyer, doubt gnawed at me. Was I really doing the right thing? When morning came, I dressed carefully. Nothing too fancy, but not too casual either. I wanted to be taken seriously. Not just by Ryan and Chelsea, but by myself. The office building was sleek and cold, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the worn feel of my home. Brian greeted me with a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Mrs. Harris, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I know this isn't easy. I nodded. It's not. Ryan and Chelsea arrived right on time, their polished appearances like a shield. Chelsea's eyes flickered over me, calculating and sharp, while Ryan's gaze was uncertain, maybe even a little desperate. Brian wasted no time. Mrs. Harris has reviewed your request. She's willing to resume payments to lift the lien, but there are conditions. Ryan leaned forward, anticipation and relief mingling on his face. Brian slid a document across the polished desk toward them. Ryan grabbed it eagerly, but his expression shifted quickly. Confusion, then anger. What is this? He demanded. I kept my voice calm, steady. My condition for lifting the lien. I will resume the payments, but the house will be sold to me, not to strangers. Chelsea's lips tightened as she snatched the paper from Ryan. That's ridiculous. You want us to sell you the house for what's left on the mortgage? It's worth 3 times that. I met her gaze without flinching. It's worth exactly what I've put into it. 35 years of payments, repairs, and memories. Ryan's face flushed red with frustration. You can't do this. The house is legally ours. Brian intervened, with a lien against it, which complicates any sale significantly. Chelsea's voice was sharp. We'll get our own lawyer. I smiled faintly. You can try, but it'll take months, maybe years. Your credit will drop. The dream house in Oakwood Hills will be sold long before you get a ruling. The truth hit hard, and Ryan muttered, You planned this all along, didn't you? From the moment we moved you to the garage. My heart clenched, but I said quietly, No. I just stopped allowing myself to be used. Chelsea stood abruptly. We need to discuss this privately. They left the room, and Brian gave me a small nod. You're doing the right thing. I wasn't so sure. When they returned, faces grim, Ryan said stiffly, We'll accept your offer. But understand what this means for our relationship. I looked him straight in the eyes. I do. And I hope one day you realize what it meant when you put my suitcases on the sidewalk. The room was heavy with unspoken things, broken trust, faded love, and the bitter cost of standing up for yourself. As I walked out, the city seemed different, not brighter, but clearer. This was war, and I was no longer the woman who would back down. I left Brian Wallace's office with a strange mix of relief and dread, the city's noise swallowing me whole as I stepped onto the crowded sidewalk. The sky was a pale gray, as if the world itself sensed the storm brewing inside me. As I walked to my car, every step felt heavier, like I was carrying the weight of a decade's worth of pain, disappointment, and silent sacrifices all at once. I thought about Ryan's face, that flicker of betrayal in his eyes when I laid down the law. About Chelsea's cold, calculating glare. How had my own family become strangers so quickly? Driving home, the familiar streets blurred past, but nothing felt familiar anymore. At the apartment, silence waited for me like a shadow. I didn't want to call anyone. Who could I tell? The neighbors? My coworkers? No, this was mine to bear. I sank into my worn armchair, hands trembling slightly as I pulled out a photo from the coffee table, a faded picture of Ryan when he was 6, grinning with scraped knees and boundless trust. The boy I once knew was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as a wallet, not a mother. How did it get this far? That night, sleep evaded me again. My mind churned, replaying every conversation, every sacrifice I had made for them. I remembered the nights I worked double shifts at Rosie's, my body aching but my heart hopeful. Hoping someday Ryan and Chelsea would see me not as a safety net but as family. But hope was a luxury I could no longer afford. The next morning brought no peace. My phone buzzed with texts I ignored. Calls went unanswered. I was exhausted emotionally and physically. Then just as I was preparing to leave for work, the unexpected happened. A knock on my door. I opened it to find Brian Wallace, the lawyer, holding an envelope and a look I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Harris, I found something you should see before things move forward. I invited him in, heart pounding. He sat down and pulled out several pages of documents, bank statements, emails, contracts, things that hadn't surfaced before. It appears, he said slowly, that Chelsea and Ryan have been funneling money out of the house's escrow account, disguising it as renovations and repairs, but actually using it for personal expenses. Boats, vacations, expensive dinners. My breath caught. I stared at the papers, disbelief mixing with a surge of anger. This changes everything, Brian said quietly. If we act on this, you might have leverage beyond just the lien. My mind raced. For years, I thought I was the only one struggling. But here it was, in black and white, proof they had been living off my labor, my sacrifices, while pretending to be helpless. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I realized this wasn't just about a house anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. But just as I started to feel a flicker of hope, my phone lit up with a new message. From an unknown number. Stop digging, Linda. This will only hurt you in the end. My hands trembled as I read it. Threats. From who? Ryan? Chelsea? Or someone else entirely? The line between family and foe blurred further. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone. And yet, beneath the fear, a fierce determination began to burn. If they wanted a fight, they would get one. But on my terms. The days after Brian's visit passed in a strange fog. At work, I moved mechanically, pouring coffee, wiping tables, smiling on cue, but inside, my mind was a whirlwind of questions and half-formed plans. The envelope with the damning documents never left my purse. I studied those pages whenever I had a moment alone, each line reinforcing the betrayal I already felt but hadn't been able to prove. Still, the anonymous threat weighed heavily on me. Who had sent that message? And how far were they willing to go to keep me silent? One evening, after my shift ended, I sat on the small balcony outside my apartment, the city lights flickering like distant stars. I scrolled through my phone, debating who I could trust. Then, a sudden ping, a new email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was chilling, "You don't know everything." With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a series of photos, pictures of Ryan and Chelsea meeting with a sharply dressed man in a fancy restaurant, exchanging envelopes and shaking hands. There were screenshots of bank transactions, large sums moving through accounts I'd never heard of. My heart pounded. Was this evidence of something bigger? Something illegal? I realized I was standing on the edge of a deeper secret than I'd imagined. The next morning, I met Brian again at his office. He was calm, collected, but his eyes betrayed concern. Mrs. Harris, he said, sliding the new photos and documents across the desk. This looks like more than just financial mismanagement. It might be money laundering or fraud. We need to tread carefully. I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. Can we stop them from selling the house right now? I asked. Legally, yes. The lien in these new findings can delay the sale. But Ryan and Chelsea are not naive. They'll fight back. And they have resources. That afternoon, I decided to confront Ryan, not in anger, but in search of answers. I called him and arranged to meet at a neutral cafe. When he arrived, he looked tense, the easy charm stripped away. The expensive watch was still there, but his eyes flickered with something darker. I didn't waste time. Ryan, I know what you've been hiding. The money moving through accounts, the secret meetings. Why? He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. Mom, you don't understand. It's complicated. Try me. He hesitated, then leaned in, voice low. Chelsea's family. They've got ties to some people. People you don't want involved. I got pulled in deeper than I wanted. This isn't just about the house or the boat. It's about survival. I felt the room close in around me. Survival? By stealing from me? He looked away ashamed. I didn't want this to happen. I thought if we could sell the house in Oakwood Hills, we could pay everyone back. Start fresh. His words felt hollow. That night, I lay awake, turning his confession over in my mind. Was Ryan a victim or a villain? Did Chelsea know? Was she the mastermind? And what about the threats? Were they coming from these people Ryan mentioned? I realized I was in deeper than I ever imagined. Days later, a knock at my door shattered the fragile calm. I opened it to find a young woman, mid-20s, nervous eyes, clutching a folder. Mrs. Harris? My name is Mia. I used to work for Chelsea's family. I have information you need to see. I invited her in, heart pounding. Mia's story was chilling. She described shady deals, pressure to launder money, threats to anyone who questioned the operation. I left because I couldn't take it anymore, she said. But they're dangerous. You have to be careful. As she handed me the folder, I realized the fight for my home was now a fight for my safety and maybe my life. The small apartment that had once felt like my sanctuary now felt like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the flickering streetlights outside, seemed loaded with menace. The folder Mia had given me lay open on the kitchen table, documents, photographs, names, and connections that painted a dark picture I was only beginning to grasp. I sat there, clutching a mug of cold coffee, rereading the statements Mia had written for me. Every line was a thread in a tangled web of corruption, deception, and danger. The next morning, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. I needed to prepare to protect myself and the home I had fought so hard to keep. I called Brian and arranged a private meeting, but before we could talk strategy, a new, unwelcome visitor arrived. It was Chelsea. She appeared at the cafe where I worked, the smile she wore barely masking the ice beneath. I didn't invite her, but she made it clear she wasn't leaving until we talked. Her voice was syrupy sweet but held an unmistakable edge. Linda, darling, why complicate things? The house, the money, we can make this easy for everyone. I met her gaze evenly, refusing to be intimidated. Easy? You've already lied, stolen, and threatened. What else are you hiding? Chelsea's eyes narrowed. She leaned in, voice low. Be careful. You're poking a hornet's nest. You might not like what bites back. I swallowed hard but didn't back down. That afternoon, I returned home to find my door slightly ajar. My heart leapt into my throat. Inside, nothing was missing but my papers. The folder Mia had given me were gone. Panic surged through me. Someone was watching, tracking my every move. I called Brian immediately. We need to escalate this, he said grimly. You're in danger. It's time to involve the authorities. But just as I was about to dial the police, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Last warning. The threat changed everything. I realized Ryan's warning about dangerous people wasn't empty, and now I was a target. Still, I couldn't give up. The next day, I met Mia again, this time at a quiet park bench far from prying eyes. She handed me a flash drive. Everything I couldn't give you before: recordings, emails, proof of their illegal dealings. I felt a surge of hope but also dread. Could I really expose this, or would it destroy me? Meanwhile, tensions at home escalated. Ryan called less frequently, his voice colder, more distant. Chelsea was openly hostile when I saw her around town. And my closest friends started acting strangely, avoiding me, whispering behind my back. I realized the web of deceit extended farther than I thought. Late one night, I was jolted awake by the sound of glass breaking downstairs. My first instinct was to call 911, but I paused. If this was an attack, running to the police might only put me in more danger without proof. Instead, I quietly grabbed my phone and slipped out through the back door. From a safe distance, I watched the front window of my apartment shatter. Heart racing, I knew this was no random act. Someone wanted me scared, silenced, or worse. Days later, Brian and I met with a trusted detective, carefully sharing everything Mia and I had uncovered. He listened, taking notes, but warned. This is bigger than a family dispute. You're dealing with organized crime. His words hit me like a punch. Could my son and daughter-in-law really be involved in something so dark? And if so, what price would I pay to bring the truth into the light? That night, as I sat alone in the dark, I stared at the flash drive. Inside it was not just evidence, it was my only weapon. And my only hope. I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what it took, I would fight for my home. For my dignity. For my family's future. The days following my meeting with the detective were a whirlwind of anxiety and quiet determination. I found myself walking a tightrope, constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who might be watching me: Ryan, Chelsea, or someone even darker lurking behind their polished facades. I knew that staying silent wasn't an option anymore. The evidence on that flash drive wasn't just proof of financial games or family betrayals, it was proof of something bigger: fraud, illegal deals, and dangerous connections that could ruin lives. The first step was to secure the flash drive. I bought a small safe from a hardware store, something cheap but sturdy enough to hide away in my apartment. I buried it beneath the floorboards of my bedroom, careful to remember its exact spot. It was the only thing I had that could protect me and maybe save me. Still, the isolation gnawed at me. My closest friends had pulled away since the threats began. The cafe where I worked felt colder, emptier, as if everyone was afraid to get involved. Even Brian, my lawyer, was growing worried. Linda, you have to think about your safety. If this escalates, you could be putting yourself in serious danger, he warned. But I had come too far to turn back now. One afternoon, I decided to confront Ryan. I needed answers, closure, maybe even a sliver of the son I once knew. I called him, asking to meet at the old park where he used to take Emma on weekends. When he arrived, his face was tight guarded. Gone was the boy I remembered, replaced by a man weighed down by secrets and regrets. Why Ryan? I asked quietly. Why drag us all into this nightmare? He looked away, swallowing hard. Mom, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Chelsea and we were desperate. The debts, the pressure. I thought if we could get the house sold, we could fix everything. But it spiraled out of control. Tears welled in his eyes, but there was no apology. Instead, he leaned in, voice low and fierce. There are people involved now. People who don't like being crossed. You've made this personal. And that's dangerous. That night, I barely slept. The shadows in my apartment seemed thicker, heavier. And when I woke to a loud knock on the door, heart pounding, I almost didn't answer. But it was Mia, her face pale and shaken. Linda, we need to talk. Now. She explained that she had uncovered new evidence, emails linking Chelsea to a powerful, untouchable figure in the city's underworld. Someone who had quietly manipulated the real estate market and laundered money through seemingly legitimate businesses. You're in deeper than you thought, Mia warned. If they know what you have, they won't stop until they get it back. The next morning, I called Brian and decided it was time to go public. We arranged a meeting with a journalist I trusted, a woman known for exposing corruption and protecting whistleblowers. At the coffee shop where we met, I handed over the flash drive. This is the truth, I told her. Please make sure it sees the light. But before the story could break, everything exploded. Ryan showed up at my door wild-eyed and desperate. Mom, please don't do this. You don't know what they'll do to you, to Emma. I'm begging you. His desperation was real, but I couldn't let fear win. I told him firmly. This ends now. No more lies, no more threats. We're taking back what's ours for Emma, for me. That night, just as the journalist promised to release the story, my phone buzzed again. An anonymous tip. You have 24 hours to drop this, or the truth comes out another way. The chilling threat was clear. I sat alone in the dark, tears streaming silently down my face. For a moment, I questioned everything. Was the fight worth the pain? Was I risking too much? But then I thought of Emma, innocent, bright, and caught in the middle. No, I wasn't done yet. The clock was ticking. The reckoning was about to begin. The moment the journalist's story went live, my world exploded in ways I couldn't have predicted. Suddenly, I was no longer just a woman fighting her son and his wife over a house. I had become a symbol, a mother standing up against corruption, greed, and betrayal that rippled far beyond my family. Messages poured in from strangers, from people who had felt powerless until now, from those who saw themselves in my struggle. But with every word of support, the threats grew darker and more frequent. Ryan called, his voice trembling. Mom, you have to stop this. Chelsea's connections are real. They have people everywhere. You don't know what they're capable of. I held the phone away, my hands shaking, but I refused to let fear control me. You knew what you were getting into, I said quietly. You made your choices. The police finally stepped in, thanks to the evidence the journalist published. A few low-level accomplices were arrested, but the bigger players remained elusive, protected by layers of power and influence. Still, it was a start. Then came the shock no one saw coming. One evening, as I locked up the cafe, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Chelsea. Her eyes were wild, desperate, but behind the fear, I saw something else, defeat. Linda, she said, voice breaking. I need your help. Ryan's in trouble. The people we crossed, they're coming for him. I hesitated. Could I trust her? Could I forgive her? But the moment Emma's name came up, everything changed. We worked together cautiously to protect Ryan and protect Emma. In a secret meeting arranged by Brian, Chelsea revealed a hidden truth. Ryan had been a pawn from the start, manipulated by those with far more to gain. She handed over documents that would help dismantle the shadowy network, proof of their crimes and plans. Slowly, justice began to catch up. Ryan entered a witness protection program. Chelsea turned herself in, agreeing to testify. And me? I was left to rebuild a life torn apart, but stronger, wiser, and free. I sold the house in Oakwood Hills. With the money, I started a foundation to help others like me. people trapped in family betrayals, financial abuse, and silence. Emma, my beautiful granddaughter, became my light. One afternoon, as we sat in the garden of my new home, she looked up at me and smiled. Grandma, I'm proud of you. And in that moment, all the pain, the lies, and the fight felt worth it. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest victories. And no matter how dark it gets, your story is never over. Your power is just beginning. Thank you for following my journey. If this story touched you, please share where you're watching from in the comments. Remember, you are stronger than you know. Stay brave. Stay bold. Stay unstoppable.